welcome in Laura Hobbs, and you didn't win.
Well, so far as we know, I didn't. I'm behind by about 22 votes, and there's going to be another election drop next week. There's about 800 votes outstanding.
Those are, what do they call those? All the provisionals and all that? Is that what those are?
Yes, provisional, challenged, and there's about 500 mail-ins that they have.
Okay. So you're here. Richard Gallardo set this up for us, and you're here to talk about. I know you were an observer, and so
Yeah.
what is it you want to actually get out there?
Well, I'd like to start by talking about the analysis I did. As a candidate, I got the ballot tracks data, and that shows you when the ballot was sent out, when it was returned, by what method it was returned. And I looked at who returned their votes early, because kind of the myth out there is that, well, it's the liberals and the Democrats that vote early and, do the mail-ins predominantly. And so I found out, surprisingly, that in all 4 districts I analyzed, there were more Republicans submitting early ballots than Democrats.
Well, there's more Republicans in Shasta County, so that would make sense.
Yeah, it follows our county-wide demographics. So there was either between about 300 and 1,200 more Republicans per district voting early than Democrats. So that satisfied my curiosity there. And the reason why I went there is because if you look at the first 2 election drops, the first one is the early vote. So that's mail-in, drop box, over-the-counter. This is everything before Election Day that's submitted. And then the second drop is the Election Day tallies. These were the ones that were in person on Election Day. So they were precinct ballots.
Do you have any data that shows who actually votes on Election Day?
I probably could figure that out, but basically what we saw was a huge difference between the early vote and the Election Day vote. And this was a difference of upwards 20 to 33%, which is quite striking. In the past, historically, like if you look at the 2018 election and the 2020, some of the 2020 elections, you see a difference of 0 to 7% between those 2 data points. So that's a red flag. And we can go into that. In the 2022 primary, we saw the similar striking differences between 22 and 34% differences. And with that election, I was able to analyze the Mesa, the cast vote record data, and I saw the Mesa pattern of fraud, and so it kind of fit with that.
What does that mean, Mesa? What is that?
The Mesa pattern of fraud is based on Jeffrey O'Donnell's work, and what it looks like, let me just explain this to you, because when you have just, say, 10 votes, and one more vote comes in, that one vote can change the outcome of the election dramatically, right? But after you have thousands and thousands of votes, one more vote comes in, and that's not going to change the outcome, the overall percentage or the will of the people. It kind of becomes a flat line after that. But in the Mesa pattern of fraud, what we saw was opposite. You saw that early variation. The percentage started very low for the person they were cheating against, started very low, and then it gradually grew and grew and grew and grew up until the end of the election, because the cast vote records is an approximation of time. And so this indicated either a front loading of votes for the one they wanted to win, or removal of valid votes for the person they wanted to lose, or both. So this was the Mesa pattern of fraud that we saw by analyzing the cast vote records. We haven't been able to analyze the cast vote records from the March 5th election yet, but that is forthcoming.
I see a lot of irregularities, and I'll give you that. But I mean, are you actually alleging some fraud here?
I can't say that there's computer manipulation until after I look at the cast vote record data, but it's suspicious that it doesn't follow the historical data, so it's a red flag.
On certain races, on every race? I mean, what are you looking for exactly?
Well, in the analysis I did of the previous elections, I looked at 50 different election contests. Of this election, you have to do it contest by contest. You can't just make a broad statement because they don't cheat on all the races. I did actually find, out of the 50 different contests, I found about 2 or 3 that actually didn't have evidence of computer manipulation.
Computer manipulation meaning what? That the computer says that a vote for candidate A when the person really voted for candidate B? Is that what it...
I don't know the specifics of it, but what I'm looking at is the trend, and what I explained was that after time that the percentage should even out at the will of the people and become a flat line. And what we saw was completely unnatural. That line continued to grow up, and that is actually impossible. And I looked at just when I do the cast vote record data, I'm actually only looking at mail-in ballots, so it's with the assumption that it's random data because people fill in their ballots at random, they turn them in at random, and they don't all arrive at the ROV's office at the same time.
Right, because they're all coming in by mail or people drop them off or whatever, but yeah, it seems, yeah, okay. I'm just wondering why it's taking so long. Now, I get that we're doing this mail-in thing, which is obviously something new for the clerk's office that has to verify every signature, which they didn't have to do when we actually went to the polls and voted. But I'm wondering why it takes so long to get our results.
Well, I have that answer for you. You're exactly right. It's because of the mail-in vote. So for faster election results, you need to vote in person using a precinct ballot because you've already undergone that first checkpoint. When they do the sign-in, either with a street roster or an e-poll pad, you're signing in. So they're doing that signature verification. That part is done. You're not submitting your ballot in an envelope, so they don't have to sit there and open 50,000 envelopes. So the way that it works is I spent a lot of time as an election observer. They have about 9 temporary election workers. These are people usually in retirement that just want a little extra income around this time of year, and they enjoy the process. So there's about 9 ladies that do this year after year, and they're sitting in there in a room opening all of the mail-in ballots as they come in. And granted, they come in, they kind of trickle in. It's because you can accept any ballot within 7 days after the election as long as the postmark is valid. So these ballots are coming in and they're processing them as fast as they can, but there's only 9 people sitting there opening them.
Okay.
So that's a bottleneck. That's one of the bottlenecks. But this is something they found that's characteristic of mail-in balloting in general. When Oregon went to mail-in balloting, their results took
longer,
much longer. Between 3 weeks to a month to complete.
We got to take a break. Laura Hobbs is here, so far an unsuccessful candidate for Shasta County Supervisor. How many votes did you say are separating you right now?
22 votes.
22 with about 850 to count still?
803.
803, okay. We're, again, talking to Laura Hobbs, and did you actually go down and observe the counting at the clerk's office?
Yeah, starting on election night at 8 p.m., I was there till about 1 a.m. in the morning. And then almost every day since then, I've been down there as they tabulate the votes because I like to see the batches as they're run through the tabulators. But one thing I saw on election night that really surprised me was that in Kathy Allen's office, which was empty because she's out on medical leave, there was a Hart Intercivic representative sitting in there working on his laptop. And he pretty much sat there that whole night, election night, but he oscillated between that sitting in Kathy Allen's office and going into the Bat Cave, which is where they keep the tabulators. So it looked by all appearances that he was administrating our election. I know Joanna was in charge, but it looked as if he was in charge.
Well, it seems like that might be normal to have a representative there, but you don't know exactly what he was doing, right?
No, I don't know. So it just looked bad. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think it's normal.
Not normal by themselves.
Yeah, it's not normal for them to be there on election night, from what I hear.
Okay. We have a phone call at 221-1402. Margaret, good morning. What's your question for Laura?
Well, good morning.
A statement first and then a question.
Okay.
My daughter received two ballots in the mail. One was for her, and the other one was for somebody else, but the same address. And a lot of reports have been said that there's no big deal. And I think it's a big deal because I think there's more than duplicates that have been out there. So my question is there an investigation or something going on about that?
The duplicate ballots. Is that? I'm sorry, I wasn't connected.
She was having a hard time hearing you at the beginning. I'm sorry.
So is there an
headphones working
investigation?
now?
Yeah, the headphones
Okay.
are working. So we do have some people looking into the duplicate ballots.
Turn yours up.
Bev Gray, the election commissioner, is trying to keep track of all the reports of duplicate ballots individually. It's not a requirement to speak to her. It's just a voluntary thing if you're interested.
Sure.
And we do need to look at the voter rolls because that's a big source of the fraud. That's how they determine who gets a ballot and who doesn't and how many ballots they get.
Right. I have an investigation myself going in, but I'm not going to say anything about it yet until they finalize all of this, because it is pretty defined. If they have done any kind of fraud, it will be exposed through this. But I'm not going to say anything on the air about that.
Okay, wonderful. I look forward to hearing about it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Margaret. 221-1402 if you have a question. Yeah, let's talk about the people that received duplicate ballots or ballots for people that don't live there, people they don't know, people that are dead. Yeah, I know you've probably done some investigation into that.
Well, honestly, the voter rolls they're not my specialty just because I don't have enough time to dig into that, but I have consulted with people who are experts on that. Larry Maloney is one of those, and one of the biggest problems we have right now is that after you've missed 2 general elections, you're supposed to be removed from the voter rolls. We have about 23,000 people who fit that category that should have been removed. We have I know from looking at the ballot tracks data that I was talking about earlier, in this election we had 2,700 ballots that were returned undeliverable. So we have issues like that where ballots are being sent to people who don't rightfully deserve them or need them. I also did notice that, some ballots are being sent over into different states, into different countries. In District 4, there's somebody receiving ballots in Bermuda. And I don't know, it could be legitimate. They could be residents here and, have a, this is their
a vacation
primary
home or whatever, but
Yeah,
or
something like that.
military. But yeah, if it's going somewhere else, that's you want to question that.
Mm-hmm. So this is a huge area of concern, and this is, I think, why we need to have local voter rolls that are not connected to the DMV, that are not connected to the CalVote state database, because they can insert as many as they want. We need to have something that's separate and unique, that's not connected to the internet and not connected to these other databases. NGOs can also enter into this database and add voters.
Well, it's certainly a problem when people get ballots that shouldn't get them, but does it necessarily mean there's fraud going on, or is it just a problem that just needs to be cleared up, that they need to clean up the voter rolls?
Well, both. But when it crosses the line, it's when that ballot that was fraudulently sent out, when it gets voted. So we need...
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Do you have any data? Can you show that maybe that some of those ballots have been actually turned in?
That's what people are working on currently and hoping to see is if there is actually votes that have been voted on these fraudulently delivered ballots.
Okay. And how do you determine that, or how are we going to determine that?
The ROV has history files, voter history files, so you can request those. They cost about $40, and you can look through people's voter history and see whether or not they voted. A lot of people have been asking me personally. They have a deceased relative, and they want to know, A, is he listed as active? Because that's a huge problem. A lot of them are listed as active, even though they've passed on. And then B, did they actually vote?
Well, if somebody does die, is the elections department notified of that somehow?
They have access to the vital record statistics, and a lot of times people are telling me is, look, I went to the ROV's office, I told them that my relative died, I asked them to remove them, and they keep sending me ballots.
They keep coming on the next election, yeah. I know. We're going to run out of time here real quick, so I want to make sure that anything that you got pressing that you get out here.
Well, one thing I want to mention is the machines themselves had problems. So we had a time change recently for daylight savings, and the machines didn't update. They said it was because they were not connected to the internet. So the day after, I think it was Monday, we started doing the tabulation. 2 out of 4 machines were an hour behind, so they couldn't use those machines to tabulate.
Oh, boy.
And then the next day, one of the 2 machines that was working the day before was a whole 24 hours behind. So they couldn't use that machine either. So they were limping along with one machine, and they continued to count with one machine. And when I say limping, I seriously mean limping, because over half of the batches scanned had to be rescanned. And that is a point of concern for me, because it seems like when the batches are rescanned, the computer only recognizes one of those 2 batches, those 2 batch numbers. And I did get a chance to talk to Joanna yesterday. She said, well, sometimes the batch has to be rejected. But when I was watching, because you get to watch from a computer monitor whether they click save or click reject, and most of the time they had clicked save batch, and it was still assigning these duplicate batch numbers. So there's stuff like that. I highly encourage anyone who's at all interested to become an election observer. We need more eyes on the process. It's invaluable to actually see how our counts are being conducted.
Give a phone number for someone if they're interested in that.
Well, if you're interested, I encourage you to come to the elections meeting that we have every Sunday, 4 p.m. at the Pizza Hut the Round Table Pizza at the mall. So 4 p.m. Round Table Pizza on Sunday. You can connect with us there or after the Board of Supervisors meetings as well, because we regularly attend those.
Okay. We're going to take one more call here real quick. Hi, what's your name, please?
Brian.
Oh, hi, Bryant. You got a question real quick? We only got about a minute.
Yeah, I do. Has anyone checked in to find out what's going on in terms of the mistakes that are being sent to the county due to the voter registration with the DMV? Because a lot of that can be laid right there.
Yeah, I think that's a big area of concern. We need to look at that. The DMV is messing up people's voter registrations, changing them from Republican to no party preference or Democrat to no party preference. And the signatures the DMV submits are very, let's say, fuzzy and not accurate. And so it messes up with the signature verification as well.
All right. Yeah, that's our whole election process from the DMV to the voter roll. It's a mess. It really is, and it may not even be fraudulent. It's just a mess. Mm-hmm. Let alone if there is fraud, which you add on top of that.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to say, too, with the amount of work and time it took for the employees to open all those ballots, that should be considered as well as the cost of having mail-in balloting and machine counting, because you wouldn't have that if you had precinct ballots counted on the day of.
All right, give that info again about the meeting before we wrap this up.
Every Sunday, 4 p.m. at the Round Table Pizza at the mall. Everyone's invited.
Thanks for coming in, and good luck with the few votes that you still need.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming in, Laura Hobbs. This is Freedom in Action. Bill and I will be back after the news.